Welcome to the podcast. I am hanging out with Kevin Bailey, co-founder and CEO of Dreamfuel. So, what is Dreamfuel? Give me kind of the elevator pitch.
It's the name. We fuel your dreams. I'm
That's
just
what it
joking.
is. That's like we're going up like 5 floors here. It's just like so you only got we only got to floor
I'll
2 and
give
you're already
you.
done
I'll
your
give you.
elevator pitch.
I'll give you. If I add it to a sentence, our mission is to provide the same quality of mental performance coaching professional athletes get to founders.
Awesome. Okay, so I have a ton of questions related to that, but I want to kind of start with, what your background is, because I'm curious about how you got to where you are. And so you're a three-time startup founder. So effectively, you've always been an entrepreneur. Is that fair?
Yeah, since I was a kid, I guess my first startup I did in high school, so I have four. But yeah, I've been founding companies and just doing my thing since I got injured, punctured lungs sophomore year, and realized I probably wasn't going to be an athlete, and so I was like, I'll be a nerd.
Yeah, those are the two options. So what was your sport?
Just basketball. I'm like 6'5".
Okay, nice.
Oh, not that I was
Um,
particularly talented.
Well, the nice thing with basketball is, if you are particularly tall, they will
Yeah.
still look at you.
Yeah.
It's like being a left-handed, if you're throwing left-handed, at least try baseball,
Yeah,
you don't have to be the
exactly.
best pitcher in the world if you're a lefty.
Yeah.
Okay, so what kind of businesses? You mentioned you started one young. What was the first business?
That was a website on my favorite car at the time, which was Dodge Vipers, and it was the Dodge Viper Speed Zone, run by Speed Demon 16, who was me, and it was the most popular Dodge Viper website on the internet.
Oh, nice. So
Yeah.
what was the business model though? Like,
Ads.
what's that?
Oh, ads.
Oh,
So like
okay, I
little
see.
banner ads. I used to like
Yeah.
take so there's like Click Trade and Commission Junction, and I used to take the banner ads and I would make my own
Hmm.
banner ads, which would like flash black and red. If you remember those old banner ads that like distract you,
Totally.
we got
Yeah.
like 25 cents a click. And yeah, I would just do click-through rate optimization. But I mean, think about this. This was 1996. This was like, the birth of the internet kind of era, and it was a Wild West. But I remember the first time I got a big check, and I was like, I don't know, maybe it was like a couple grand or something. And
Yeah.
my parents were like, "What is this?" I was a sophomore, They're like, "What are you doing? And, are you dealing drugs or something?" And then
No,
I was like, "No,
drugs are
this."
always cash. No one
Yeah,
cuts you
no,
a
yeah,
check for
they don't cut
drugs.
you
What
a
is this,
corporate check for
amateur
drugs.
hour?
What do you? But I brought it into class and I showed my friends in chemistry, and I was like, "Look, I got this check. I don't do anything. I don't maintain this website. It takes me like, an hour a week, and I make this money." And they were just like, their eyes just like lit up, and they were like, "Holy cow, can you teach us how to do that?" I taught them how to do that, and we built little web companies for like real estate agents and advertising websites back in the day. And then we were good friends, and we launched my first tech startup, which was a rocket ship, fastest growing in our state in 2011. Those three guys from high school.
Wow. So are they still friends, business partners, or
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they're not business partners anymore, but they're good friends. I mean, we
yeah,
managed to keep that.
that's awesome.
It was funny that it's like the whole thing just wrapped up. I mean, we had exited the company, not for what we wanted to. We almost became really wealthy when in my 20s, but yeah, we exited the company, and it's funny. We had an old bank account associated with one of them that I thought was shut down, and it was related to our lease and stuff. And like literally last week, and this is 15 years later that we've been involved. Both companies that we sold are still exist. But it was like the bank called me and was like, "Hey, you know, there's some, I don't know, it was like 10 grand or something sitting in an account, from your sublease or whatever the hell." I was like,
Yeah,
"Oh, cool. We'll just distribute that out."
that's
Like,
awesome.
it's nice little.
So what did you do after that? What was another one of your startups then?
Yeah, after that, I founded a tech community. That first one was tough, man. Like, I was CEO. We ran it up to about 120 employees, about 12 million ARR, and it was just about took my soul. Um, the second one I founded with my friend Matt, who was a team member from that company, Slingshot Relevance, and we built I helped him build. He's the guy. I helped him build the tech community for the Midwest called PowderCake.com and
Okay.
Midwest America. And yeah, that taught me a ton about founders and the problems they were going through. And I found that the burnout that I was experiencing when I first started was kind of ubiquitous, and most founders were dealing with mental health, mental performance issues, and that was kind of the what sort of got me to want to do Dreamfuel.
Yeah. So, and that's what I was curious about, is because it seems to me that at the foundation of Dream Fuel, there's an experience that you must have had that says, shit, people need help when they're, in these positions, and it's
Yeah.
not always available to them. Was that kind of your motivation for Dream Fuel?
Yeah, I mean, I know so many founders who developed like literal physical issues, IBS, like heart arrhythmias, like all kind of stuff from the stress. And I'm like, that stuff that you can sell your company, but you keep your health forever. And
Mm-hmm.
I just started seeing all this. I'm just like, man, like it can be better. And I knew it could be better because I met a neuroscientist and a mindfulness coach when I was at Dreamfuel that taught me a lot of this stuff, when I was younger, and totally changed the game for me. And I was like, you guys need to know this stuff. You don't need to feel so freaking miserable.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what was interesting about this, um, you said you want to provide founders with the same quality of mental performance coaching they'd receive as a pro athlete. So
Mhm.
I thought that was interesting. And so that's basically as a result of your experience as an athlete.
No, so my co-founder's a pro athlete.
Okay.
So Anna was an eight-time All-American, neuroscientist from Notre Dame, neuroscience major from Notre Dame. Went on to run professionally for the Boston Athletic Association, and her dad's a neuropsychologist. And she just kind of like, it's like, business meets athletics, and then we developed, the first curriculums, and now we have a bunch of coaches that are amazing, better than us, um, who continue to evolve the model. But yeah, they're coaches who've coached pro athletes and founders alike. We find unique people who kind of have a background in both. Like one of our coaches has brought a company public, but he's also been a professional cyclist. And it's like, it's all about performance. And
Mm-hmm.
how do you set yourself up for high performance and not kill your life along the way?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, totally right. You have to. I was talking to a guy the other day, and instead of work-life balance, he was talking about work-life harmony.
Mhm.
Because obviously it's never going to be a 50-50 balance, right? But yeah, how do you succeed without, compromising your health to the point where you can't enjoy life at you know what I mean? Like you
Yeah,
build
all
this
you
up and
accomplish, you
then
don't get to enjoy it.
yeah, totally. And then your kids get all the money and you die early and it sucks.
And you get to haunt them.
So the original idea is that. How has it evolved? And I guess when did you start it, and how has it evolved since you guys came up with the original concept?
Yeah, we started off working with a lot of sales teams, sales leaders,
Mm-hmm.
and I love that because it's cool because you can track it is like a sport. You can track it very
Mm-hmm.
closely, and we were finding that when we taught sales leaders and salespeople, sales teams these tools, like they were able to bump performance about 20%. We're like, that's worth paying for,
Mm-hmm.
like we don't got to bring up a mental health angle. Like, let's talk about bumping their performance 20%. So
Yeah.
we were able to sell really good on that. And what I realized over time is I'm like, I totally respect the job of sales. I do it right now. Um, my heart went out to the founders though, and
Mm-hmm.
who I felt were, um, I just resonated with because I'm that.
Mm-hmm.
And I I had to make the tough decision to be like, that's a great market opportunity and certainly could make a really successful company, and start to angle the business toward the founders and CEOs that I wanted to serve. It was tough because I had to put my heart above money, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
because that was a faster track serving sales teams. This is slower, it's
Mhm.
more methodical.
Especially when you can show a metric like this
Yeah.
will increase your sales X amount. You kind
Yeah,
of
yeah. It was like
a
we could put it in a
salesperson is going to
box
stop
and
and be like, okay, I'm
um
listening.
yeah, yeah. So now it's like, the metric we work on is getting them to successful exits. That takes time. We've got about
Mm-hmm.
38% of the founders that we have coached have hit their big exit, made their big money. And that's a stat that a lot of VCs would be jealous of. So I'm like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
that's the performance metric. It's like get them all the way to the utopia. Um, but yeah, it's always funny because then we get a private equity we're dealing with, and the founders are gone, and it's like then they we're normally at that point scaled in an organization, and they sometimes wean us back a little bit. I'm like, damn, we won, and you guys, that's the we get. So we started taking a little bit of advisor shares. So it's like
Okay.
when they get the
Oh
exit,
yeah.
we get something too.
Oh, that's a good idea. Okay, so I was nerding out on your website. I have a whole bunch of questions. Um, so you talk about it being a neuroscience-based approach. What does that mean?
Yeah. So you talk about the mind. There's no tape measure for the mind. It's like if you're working on a gratitude network, for example, which is well correlated with performance, it's like I can't tell you how big your gratitude network is. Like, we don't have the ability to do fMRIs or anything. So it becomes kind of fluffy. Then people start calling, working on the mind woo woo and all, it's like they like can't wrap their heads around it. So we are finally in an era beyond psychology where you can actually understand the physical aspects of how the brain works. And for me, as an analytical guy, I'm like, I can't even embrace something until I see how it works. And when I know
Hmm.
how it works, I go 110%. So I think, the tools we use have been around, but the neuroscience has not been around that long. So you take like a topic like self-sabotage.
Hmm.
Um, Self-sabotage is basically a quit response, and there's a little part of your brain called the habenula that facilitates you quitting. It does that by strangling the dopamine reward system in your brain, which gives you dopamine. Dopamine's the molecule of motivation. If the habenula turns on, it squeezes that down basically and won't let you produce a bunch of dopamine to keep you going toward an outcome. So you quit. And the reason the habenula gets activated, which they've proven, through a lot of neuroscientific research, it's part of the brain. You can see it light up. The reason it lights up is because you think you failed. Okay. That means like failing on a SMART goal or failing in a New Year's resolution or something like that. So if you think consciously that you failed, you know, at a little piece of the puzzle, you may quit the whole thing. So people in gratitude, people who kind of I say live in the gain, kind of like they're all about like looking backward and being like, oh, look at all that I've accomplished in my career, and they stay there, they stay in the gain instead of that gap.
Hmm.
Those are the people who keep in the marathon because they don't activate the habenula constantly, which rips their dopamine away. So like knowing
So,
that, I can explain it to you, and now you can actually understand why a
mhm.
gratitude practice is important.
You mentioned actually this was on I was also stalking you via LinkedIn, and you were talking about that, and you were talking about the idea of removing the word failure from your vocabulary to kind
Hmm.
of stop that from
Hmm.
happening.
Hmm.
Um, so what's your relationship with failure then? How do you kind of take that same experience but reframe it in a way that could become then a positive?
Yeah, I'm in a little startup band, and we have a song called "You Got to Iterate." That's the way you want to look at everything in life is just constant iteration. You don't fail, you learn up, and everything's just a test, an experiment, iteration. You keep iterating, you learn, you get data, but yeah, you never throw the towel in. I mean, you can throw the towel in if like the data is just like this is dumb.
Yeah,
But if you believe in what you're doing and it's like you just gotta find the way, then yeah, just remove the word.
just
And
keep going.
iteration can mean a massive pivot. You might be like, yeah, this approach to the market is dumb, so we're going to take this totally other approach. And I'm
Hmm.
not going to say that approach failed. I'm going to say that was an experiment that didn't go how we
Yeah,
hypothesized. Let's try another experiment.
yeah,
And obviously, hope you don't run out of money along the way. But even if you run out of money, it's like you can figure that out too. Go
100%.
There's a
Yeah.
will, there's a way.
Um, on you say that 70% of thoughts are disempowering. Obviously, failure would be a disempowering thought. How do we, like, I guess, in business, there's so much pressure to, succeed. Like you said, I mean, if you're not making revenue, it doesn't take long before you have to kind of look at different paths. But just in terms of just an everyday human being, you know, why is it, I guess, that 70% of what we think is disempowering? And how do we reframe, or how do we reset our brain to kind of think a little bit more positively?
You watch the news.
Yeah, no shit. That's a big one.
What percent of the content we're getting fed throughout our entire lives is negative? The media we
Yeah.
watch, the movies, the music. What percent do you
Mm.
think is negative or disempowering?
Yeah.
So
And
I'm
you know what?
asking you the question. I'm asking you the question. Like, what do you think?
Oh, well, I mean, I don't watch the news anymore. I don't watch,
But
I
you
mean,
did when you, I mean, you,
Canadian,
yeah.
sorry, no, go
I'm
on.
sure I mean, you did when you were a kid, though, right? I mean,
We
obviously you watched
watch
the
the
news, but
news.
like media
What
was there, right?
Totally, totally. And I wouldn't say that I don't watch news. Obviously, like I get the news feeds on my phone and stuff like that. I don't like at home physically, we don't have a TV in our main room.
Okay.
If I go to my dad's place, he's got like CNN going on constantly or Fox or whatever, but it's a constant loop. And that's how we were when we were kids. And I just thought that was normal. And I also thought the news was objective. Like I just thought like this is what's happening in the
Yeah.
world. I didn't realize when I was a kid that oh this is a narrative. Like they're interpreting what's happening and they're giving us kind of a story.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, neither did I. And neither do most kids. They call it
Right.
programming, right?
Hmm.
I don't sound like there's nothing conspiracy about it. Like it is programming.
Yeah.
So you think about the average kid up to the age of 8, you're in a brainwave called theta. Theta is the state of hypnosis. If a hypnotherapist was working on you, they'd want to get you into theta, then they'd program your brain. So these
Hmm.
kids are walking around in theta brainwave. It's like a dreamy kind of state. It's why kids can imagine so well and play so cool, is because they're
Hmm.
in theta. And in theta, you just download everything as fact. Everything you hear is fact. And then if you think about the brain's just an echo chamber. These are neural networks that are being programmed and then they echo. Okay, if you try and meditate, you're just like, oh, what is that thought? That thought. Why did Poppy steal my toy when I was 10? That asshole,
Yeah.
like, and it's just echoing. Okay,
Hmm.
these beliefs and concepts are fed to you as a child, and then they echo throughout the rest of your life unless you do something about it.
Right. So
That's why
basic,
70% of our thoughts are negative, is because we're programmed with negative thoughts when we're
yeah.
children. But you could do the opposite as well.
Hmm. Yeah, and it's important, and you have to consciously make that, it's like, yeah, what are you feeding your brain on a daily basis? So read a book versus watch the news. Go to a comedy versus going to a horror movie. Like,
Yeah, and you
I
like
mean,
watch like I mean, my wife and I are always complaining about dramedies or whatever they call them, but it's like the comedies aren't funny anymore. Like you watch
mhm,
Netflix and it's like, what is this? Like this is a
yeah,
political satire thing that's not even funny, but they're trying to call it comedy. I'm like, I watch comedy to laugh. I'm
yeah.
not trying to like I'll watch a drama if I want to think.
Well, I can't even watch, like, I used to always stay up and watch like the late shows. And now they're so politically driven that they're not funny anymore. You know what I mean? Like they used to just make fun of everybody. And now there's kind of like, okay, we can make fun of him, but we can't make fun of him. And it's just very divided. It's just like comedy was supposed to be about making fun of everybody. And it's kind of like, it's how you even the playing field. You know what I mean? And it's so I do like that. And I think that it's one of those like it's simple, but it's not easy kind of things, right? In terms of like just cut out the news, cut out the negativity, change that, like I guess fill that void with positive, good books, good media, that sort of thing. It's an easy concept, but it takes a lot of thought on a daily basis for someone to actually do that. You have to be quite mindful.
Yeah, you got to filter. I mean, I was just at lunch with a buddy who's kind of into this stuff, and he's CEO of a growth company, and he's like, I used to like Linkin Park. He's like, and I'm listening to it with my son, the album before Chester had committed suicide. I'm like, man, these lyrics. And he's like, he had to turn it off and just realize that it's just feeding negativity into his son.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, and it just like, you can't be crazy about it, but it's like, this is the world we live in. It's
No.
like your kid's probably going to get some shitty programming, and then it's like, how do you teach them how to deal with that? I guess. I
Yeah,
mean, uh,
absolutely.
yeah, I was talking to another person yesterday, like who's into AI, and she's like, all right, well, we got AI coming, it's going to be really powerful. They just raised $6 billion. OpenAI did the biggest raise in tech history, and she's like, the philosophers are saying the solution to AI is make sure we teach our kids to be kind, because they'll program robots that are kind, and it's like that's the solution. So that's a little scary. She's like, what's kind? What does kind mean? Is kind different to other people? Is it the same?
Hmm.
So it's like, yeah, you asked why 70% of thoughts are negative. I'm just kind of riffing on it.
No, 100%, man. So you talk a lot about mindset. I know there's one video on your website, and the guy was talking about mindset. Um, so negative energy is contagious, so you want to obviously try to be positive as much as possible, but then, being happy all the time isn't realistic. So kind of like talk about a little bit about what mindset means to you, and how do you improve your mindset, and what does an optimal mindset look like, if that makes sense?
Yeah, there's no mental fitness pillar called happiness. Happiness is a byproduct of a life well lived, I believe. That's certainly not something you're going to be all the time. We teach equanimity. Equanimity is building a mindset that allows you to stay stable in high pressure situations and be kind of in the middle, not too high, not too low, very rational. You can make good decisions. You can be calculating if you need to be. Yeah, you're not letting your emotions take over, but you're being incredibly mindful of them and letting them run their course so they don't clog your nervous system up. You can't suppress emotion. Um, so equanimity is yeah, it's kind of like, I guess, a sort of like a Zen state.
I like that. Yeah, it's I was actually thinking of Seinfeld when you said that, when Kramer's doing this Serenity Now, not thinking about his emotions, and then he kind of snaps a little bit. But and it is challenging. Like I'm learning more about meditation, and it's one of those things where you have to feel, if you're angry, you have to feel your anger, but you don't need to define yourself as angry, right? Like, do you know what I mean? Like you're feeling anger, but you're not an angry person per se. Kind of like separate yourself from that emotion, but feel it, right?
Mhm.
You're giving the head nod. No, I love it. I love it. Okay, so success fatigue, that was a term that was on there. So it just seems counterintuitive to me, like you in terms of, like, I feel like if you are succeeding, how do you get tired of succeeding? So on the website it talks about success fatigue. What does that mean?
Real quick, going back to the anger thing you were saying, um, I mean, this is, classic kind of Buddhist stuff because Buddhists talk about anger a lot, but,
Yeah.
you know, I'm actually Christian, but I do really respect Buddhism. I've studied it quite a bit. But yeah, I mean, you're creating, like you just said, a little bit of distance from your emotions. Really, you're trying to not be them. What I mean by that is observe them and
Mm-hmm.
not become them. Because a lot of times we say we are our emotions, like, I'm mad. No, you're feeling mad
Mm-hmm.
temporarily.
Mm-hmm.
It's a feeling. It's not you. You're not mad. You are something beyond what you think.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you are the conscious being behind all this flesh suit stuff. So, like, acknowledge that. Acknowledge your body feels angry.
Mm-hmm.
You got to acknowledge it. If you suppress it, it's really not good on the nervous system. Um, but yeah, it's like, but don't fall into it and become anger because that's not you. That's an illusion.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And that's another one of those, like, it sounds simple, but it's something it's like daily practice of working on that and
Yeah, dude,
reminding yourself of that.
100%. It's like I probably sound like a know-it-all right now. I F this stuff up all the time. Like, it's very hard to get good at this stuff.
Yeah.
That's why
I
the
said,
Buddhist monks spend forever working on it.
yeah, I said that to my buddy once. I'm like, I feel like sometimes I'm making progress, and then I'll go home and me and my wife will be talking, and I'll get, angry at her. And I'm like, Jesus, like, I just reset, like, you know what I mean? I'm like, all this progress I think I'm making. And the first person I talk to, and I'm having an argument, and he said, that's why it's called practice.
Exactly.
It's like, it's a practice because you're never going to be perfect, but be mindful of it, and keep practicing.
Yep.
So I was telling you, I like the term work-life harmony maybe more than work-life balance now, because every time I ask about work-life balance, I get corrected. So there you go. I'll use work-life harmony. You take Mondays off to focus on serotonin activities. What does that mean?
Yeah. Balance, I don't mind work-life balance. People, who struggle with work-life balance talk about work-life integration, um, work-life harmony or whatever.
Yeah.
But sometimes it feels like an excuse. Um, I get it. Uh, if I think about work life and what's really under those words, I think of neurotransmitters. So If you think of work, I think of dopamine, molecular motivation. We talked about it with the habenula. If I think of home or life, I think of joy, and I think of serotonin. You know, um, Dopamine's the molecule of motivation, molecule associated with pleasure. Serotonin is the molecule of joy, associated with being present, associated with being here. Dopamine's associated with craving, wanting.
Mm.
Serotonin's associated with having it all.
Hmm.
So balance those neurotransmitters out, and you'll have a balanced work life. Because there's a lot of people who are applying their dopamine activities, so to speak, their work, goals, time, budgets, all that stuff to their home life.
Mm.
And not to say there's not a place for it with home budgeting, for example, but if you turn your home life into a dopamine activity, your serotonin networks, which have been atrophying since you picked up a backpack, are going to be further and further and further and further weakening in the brain, to the point where everything to you is some sort of high stakes game. Um, so I take Mondays off to reinforce and work on serotonin because I want to be joyful.
Yeah.
And if you think about dopamine, dopamine's like, well, serotonin's like, kids love kicking balls, right?
Hmm.
They just kick it for the pure love of the kicking the ball, right? It's just a
Yeah.
joyful thing, right? Got a 1 year old who's running around kicking balls, and not me in the balls, but he kicks balls. But yeah, he's running around kicking balls, and we dopamine turn it into soccer, and
Hmm.
we put time on it, put time bounds on it, we put goals on it, and all of a sudden it turns from this joyful thing to this pleasurable, like competitive thing.
Hmm.
And that's the difference between the two. One is done purely for the joy of it. One is done to achieve and to earn and to make. So when I have a serotonin day, I take my cell phone, I put it in a box specifically for my cell phone, and I live my day like a kid on the first day of summer break. And I just let go, and I get up with the sun, and I go to bed when my mom calls me in for dinner, or my wife, I don't know.
Yeah.
She's my mom. And then, but yeah, I work out. I'll eat Chipotle in the sun, listen to my favorite music for 2 hours because why the hell not? And
Yeah.
like I put no time bounds on anything, put no goals on anything. I got no schedule to meet. And that day, I meditate, I do qigong. That day reinforces the serotonin parts of my brain that allow me when I get home from work to be present with my children. And that's balance to me.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. You're mentioning that I was trying to look at the notes here where you said it, but playing catch with your son, like playing like to me, it's just like I love that point, and I'm guilty of it in terms of, my kids play soccer, and and I like to mountain bike, and sometimes when we're, to your point, we don't go out and just play kick the ball. It's just like there's a soccer game happening, right? Or if we're going for a bike ride, it's like, well, we're gonna go from here to on the trail to that hut. There's a destination, and I'm turning it like just a simple bike ride that could be like putts around the neighborhood to like this structured activity. And you can actually see the kids disengage as soon as you do that, right? So I never really broke it down in the way that you did. So I really like that. So your next adventure, you said you're learning how to create an accelerator. I don't know if that's jumping random topics, but I'm curious what that means.
I'm learning about it. I've heard the word, I've been around them. I know like Y Combinator and some of these accelerators, and an incubator is like a space companies come together and to incubate. An accelerator is like an active program where normally they're putting funds into the company and they are setting them up on a path to succeed. I would love someday for my mental performance coaching company, Dreamfuel, to take more equity stakes in companies that are making an impact on the planet. I call them tech seals, tech for sea, tech for earthlings, tech for air, tech for land, and uh, and I would love to help them accelerate their growth by being an accelerator with mindset at the very heart of it. And that's a vision that that I stumble toward in the dark. That I'm
Yeah.
not quite at. Maybe have a couple of them now, but I really would like to move more in that direction, God willing, to because I love working with founders that are taking all this amazing technology and doing good with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Now that might answer the next question, but I'm curious. So I used to ask people what inspires them, and I had someone say, like, I'm not necessarily inspired all the time, but I'm always curious. So I kind of replaced the word inspired with curious. Is there something that you're really curious about these days? It doesn't have to be work related, but something that maybe you're doing a random deep dive into or anything like that?
I started this off with you. I'm curious about what being of service really means. I'm curious about service-oriented mindsets. I know that like when I'm running real hard and somebody passes me, if I'm struggling and they pass me and I look at them and I'm like, ah, F this dude. Why is he faster than me? And I start doing this, it slows me down and I feel like crap. And if I'm struggling and the person passes me and I start cheering from them in my mind with everything I got, like, go gray-haired dude,
Yeah.
you're kicking butt. That I run faster and and I feel better and I'm more inspired because my brain got off me.
Yeah.
And and as we get into the harder situations, it gets harder and harder and harder to be able to do that when you're on the line,
Right.
when your business is on the line, when
Mm.
something you care about is on the line and you're personally on the line. It's so hard to do that, but that's like the most important times to do that. So I'm
Yeah.
curious about what service really means.
So is that related to when you're describing that? I had a conversation with someone the other day about, the concept of the zero sum game, which is, if someone's succeeding, that must mean you're failing on some level, right? Like so service to me means you're not really you can't be preoccupied with the zero sum game and be of service to people, because you have to be conscious that, you know, by helping them and being of service to them, they may leapfrog you and become more successful than you, however you measure it. In business, maybe you measure it by revenue or what have you. So what's your what's your take on that? Like, what's your philosophy on kind of the zero sum game versus, you know I guess, being of service, but also there's the philosophy of, a rising tide floats all boats.
I love it. That was really well articulated. You're kind of talking about an abundance mindset there,
Hmm.
Um, there's enough for all of us. As a coach, you kind of got to have that. There's other coaches out there, and it's like we're all in the same. We are all working for the same company. You know,
Hmm.
it's like don't kid yourself. Like we're on the same team. I don't care if we're competitive. Um, we are trying to do the same thing.
Yeah.
And, and then I was talking to a friend of mine, and I should do my own podcast, and his name's David Mann. He's like he runs Firefly Group, which is the probably the holding that they're most known for is Entrepreneurial Operating System, EOS, which is like a really well-known operating system for startups. Made
Hmm.
250,000 companies work on it. And he's Catholic, and I just became Catholic like 5 years ago. And he said, he's like, Christianity really teaches an abundance mindset. I was like, why is that? And he goes, because like our two principles are like love God with all your heart and love others. You love your neighbors as you love yourself. And how the heck could you ever do that if you didn't think God was going to provide for you and you were good?
Hmm.
And I was like, that's a cool way to think about it. Because I teach abundance mindset, like I teach the neuroscience of it and all that junk. But
Right.
like just to take it to Christianity and be like, okay, it's a nice way to think about it. Um, but yeah, curious about it.
No, I like that. Cliche question here, but I'm always curious. Is there something that you tell people all the time, like advice that you give people, or is there something that someone has said to you in the past that just continuously resonates with you?
Hmm. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is just, my dad teaching me not to panic.
Hmm.
Um, I can remember when I was like 16, we were actually in Canada on Eagle Lake fishing for like muskie, and like a big storm came in, and just was just bad. And we were just in, just a little bass boat, and the waves were massive. And I was the one driving as the storm came in. I remember my dad kind of sitting there because he taught me my whole life not to panic. And he just kind of like looked at me, and I kind of looked at him. I was like 16, and he knew that like this could kill us. And he was like, he just looked at me, kind of shook his head. He's like, "You're driving." And I just had to like go into kind of like the zone and just hit the waves perfectly perpendicular to bounce down and that thing all the way back in. And I was, regulating my breath, even though I didn't know what breath work was. And like I got back, and he's like, "I feel like a good dad." He's like, "I taught you not to panic. You got us back. You're a man now, Kev." I was like, "Thanks, dude." He got me a
Yeah,
little. He took a Canadian coin and made a necklace out of it, and
that's
it's just
cool.
kind of like trying to
That
create a.
that's a good metaphor, because I used to bike a lot or boat a lot when I was a kid. And sometimes the temptation when you're learning how to drive a boat is to kind of go with the waves, but
Mhm.
you have to, like you said, you have to go
Oh yeah,
perpendicular.
definitely would
And
have flipped it.
yeah, but like to me, that's like that is a metaphor, right? It's just like sometimes you want to kind of do that with things, and sometimes you got to turn the boat and just
Hit it head on.
go right into the wave, right?
Yeah, there's reminds me like my kids are, but my son is 1.5 and he listens to this stupid nursery rhyme thing. It's called like Baby Bum Bum or something. And there's a little song and it's like, can't go over it, can't go under it, can't go around it, can't go around it, must go through it, must go through it. And it's
Yeah,
like, talk about programming, and it's teaching him that like can't avoid some things. You gotta face them head on, even at his
100%,
age.
man. So I asked you what if there was a topic that you wanted to talk about. I thought this was pretty interesting, um, especially with all the technology advancements. You mentioned AI, but you said, what will society look like 30 years from now?
Yeah.
So what will society look like 30 years from now?
I haven't been asked that question for uh 15 years probably. I think about it. I do little golden age visualizations to try and get my mind right for it. I always thought I'd be somebody who would help people with this. But like, because when I read Kurzweil's Singularity is Near when I was, 15 years ago, and I was like, oh my goodness, the future is going to be mad. Um, so 30 years. So the singularity is supposed to happen at like in the late 2030s, early 2040s. So the singularity is when technology advancement, Moore's law goes perfectly straight up, pretty much. So it's a hockey stick, doubling technology like every day kind of thing.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Because AI is so smart at that point that like it's just, you get this cornucopia moment of like everything being realized. Um, I couldn't describe it any better than Kurzweil, but 30 years would be past that threshold. There might be some things that come up that block that, but I don't think so. So if we go through that and I guess we have kind children, we don't blow ourselves up in the process.
Yeah.
Um, Kurzweil talks about robots and humans. You can't tell the difference. Um, Virtual reality and reality, you can't tell the difference. Um, Life expectancy will be a whole different conversation, you know, meaning
That's
like,
interesting.
um, you basically will be able to live probably as long as you'd like,
Hmm.
um, or society allows, or whatever. It's gonna be a different conversation.
Yeah, totally.
Um, and I think those are some of the three big markers of that.
So is that good, or is that like I don't know how to I don't know how to think of that. It's because I want my kids to have, I mean, you always kind of, I don't know, sometimes you think you want to have your kids have the same experiences that you have. I mean, obviously they're gonna have different ones, but I want it to be grounded in some sort of like reality, some sort of tangible, they can go for a hike, like not, the whole idea of like there not being a difference between virtual reality and reality. I don't know. That obviously scares me. Does that scare you, or is that just like, hey, it is what it is?
When I was first thinking about it 15 years ago, I thought about like we need to be really mindful about it and regulate it and stuff. Like I was already noticing how bad my phone was. I remember I was talking when I exited my first company, I was to build model rockets when I was a kid. I was gonna get the biggest model rocket I could get with the biggest engines, and I was gonna strap my phone to it, put a quarter stick on it, and just fire the thing off into the ocean and blow it up. My phone. That's the relationship I had with my phone when I was starting my first
So
company.
just because you just didn't want to ever have a
I was
phone
like, I
again,
hate
or
this. I was like, I hate this thing. Like it controls my life. Like I have emails
Mhm.
constantly and text messages. I was like, I just want to be at peace. Now I found how to be at peace with a phone because I didn't get that rich to where I could just be like, fuck the phone. Um, but uh, but yeah, man. I mean, so back then I used to be like, we better be really intelligent about this because these phones are not good for us. And I'm like, what else are we going to come up with that's not going to be good for us? And
Mhm.
so I was like, there's going to be some technology council of really smart people that really care, and they're going to do science experiments to figure out if these new technologies are actually helping us or hurting us. And like, that has not happened yet, but it has to. And that's why I'm hoping we get get good politicians, we get good leaders that actually like really look at this stuff and go,
Mhm.
just because it's like Jurassic Park, just because we can, should we?
Yeah,
Like, um, but it's like the only laws change, and we're gonna have to be really adaptive because it's gonna get real weird.
yeah. No, I like that. And so that's the book you recommended, wasn't it? It was, yeah, The Singularity is Near.
Mm.
Now I don't know if I want to read that. You've kind of spooked me. Um, so on a daily basis, what motivates you? What do you like? What are you most excited to do? Yeah, like why do you keep doing what you do?
I have lots of motivations.
Yeah.
Um, there's not one that's distinct. I think it's multifaceted. I wanna be of service to the world. Told you that's one of the curiosities of mine.
Mhm.
I wanna be a great father. I want to be a good provider. I want to be a good husband. I want to have cool conversations like this. I want to be inspired. I want to know how to make life more vibrant. And it's not always what you think it's going to be. So I love exploring. And this job, this company kind of gives me a nice place to do that.
Nice. I like that. Well, this has been awesome. Like, yeah, I was telling my wife before I was chatting with her because she was letting me know about my kids. They were in a my one daughter was in a cross country run, so they were letting me know. But as I was prepping for this podcast, it's just kind of one of those like I get to ask questions that a lot of this you know applies directly to my life. So it's really cool to be able to sit down and ask you all these and I really appreciate you taking the time.
Hey, man, you asked great questions. I appreciate the opportunity to be on here. I hope I did a good job.
You did a great job, Kevin. Let's stay in touch because I'll probably have a million more questions for you.
Yeah, man. I'd love to stay in touch.
All right, man. Okay. Well, thank you. Take care.
Thanks, brother.